I think what we lack at that time is the communication, the understanding of the challenges, the understanding of to communicate what is gender, why women have to be at the table. But once we surpass that communication blockage, that even men at that time, the male counselor become the chair of the gender committee. I think that is my achievement, because he is the one who really opposed me when I want to establish the gender committee. At the end, he understands, he become the chair and become the champion, like our minister here. So I think this is very important for us, that during the COVID-19 pandemic, I think this is not only did we had the surplus, but it is also we built a network. I think we need to build a network built up by women who are at the ground when COVID-19 happened. I think we are the women are at the ground. So I also recommended this systematic and plan-led approach, which I call bottom-up, top-bottom, and convergence of ideas, convergence of decision in the middle for this innovative thinking. So it creates accountability on both sides at the table, and eventually we recognize that the table is round, and it is not us versus them, but all of us together. I think this is very important. And when I was in the UN, we presented the concept of women-led cities. Then those who attended the UN Habitat Assembly last year in Nairobi, I put forward the women-led cities. I also brought it down to Malaysia. I also launched these women-led cities at the Malaysia Urban Forum in October last month. And this concept does not exclude any party, but rather ensures that all workforce talents and abilities of city residents are fully utilized, sustainable urban development in the long term. Because, as you know, that more than 50% of the world population is female. Why don't we use this talent? And yet, in many contexts, women seldom have the opportunity to lead. Women seldom have the opportunity to develop and manage cities. Specifically, the gender gap in urban leadership roles remain a significant issue. Only 5% of cities worldwide are led by women. Why? We have 50%, but only 5 cities are led by women. In business, only 8% of the 500 Fortune companies are headed by women. And just now, the moderator, additionally, in the workforce, women earn around 37% less than men, even when holding equivalent roles or position. Why? So I think this is a women will continue to face discrimination through the systemic structural barriers that prevent them from taking on leadership roles, resulting in unequal access to rights. If left unaddressed, the gender gap in politics is expected to take over 145 years to close, and economic gender gap will take 265 years to bridge. We don't have time. I think the time to act is now, and we have to walk our talk and make a transformative change. Well, we know they have the challenges, but I think together we can walk these challenges and make a successful move in everything that we do, and also to get some very good impact on the people that we serve on the ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Maimuna, for your really very strong words. We are gathered here in Cairo, in this wonderful country with history and with so much, which were one of the earliest cities were actually in this country, in civilization. So I think we are, I'm really honored to have as part of this opening Dr. Nesreen El-Baghdadi. I'm trying my best. Thank you so much for joining us. She's a professor of sociology at the National Center for Social and Criminological Research, Egypt, where she used to be the director until 2017. And she also serves on the board of the National Commission for Women, nominated by the president. She supervises many projects. Dr. Nasreen, you come to us with so many different hats and so much knowledge. So you're a specialist both in gender and criminology, and I think that is a very interesting intersection. Could you share with us why you think violence against women remains such a persistent phenomenon worldwide, despite so many global commitments, including the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action? Over to you, madam.
شكرا جزيلا لحضراتكم.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody in your second home, Egypt. It's an honor and pleasure to congratulate the NCW National Council for Women, presided by Councillor Amal Ammar, where there is a decision issued from His Excellency the President to reform the NCW National Council of Women with a presidency of Councillor Amal Ammar, and also with the presence of 30 members, including men, so that there would be support. And I have communicated with the minister before the session that the man should be supportive to the women. And he spoke about the 5 daughters and the mother. Dear presidents, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, we, in all of the countries, we have stereotypes regarding the role of women in the society. Thus, this usually puts the woman actually as a subordinate or an affiliate inside the family. This is wrong ideas about women, actually justifies the violence, maybe somehow clarify the violence committed against her. There is a misconception that women need disciplinary correction, and this is what gives justification for man to be in control inside the society. There are also some weak legal systems. There could be some legal text, but they are not fully implemented or not sufficiently implemented. In the context of protecting the women from violence, we need to have a social culture and a social conviction that prevail in the whole society, and there would be enough sufficient punishment so that anyone who would commit this act would be actually penalized and not be and won't have any impunity. There is also another problem in different societies, which is not using technology in documenting the violence and not responding to complaints, as well as actually women work in unpaid jobs, and the countries do not make enough studies that reflect the economic cost of this phenomena. In my capacity as specialized in sociology, I would like to speak about the importance of having enough studies that always detect the priorities and the needs of the women in all sectors, so that we would be able to take the appropriate intervention policies that always actually go in line to fulfill the demands of women. The woman is always the weak part because she is actually subjected to violence in the armed conflicts, in the disputes, and we can see this obviously in what's happening to the Palestinian women and the armed violence. Also, there is a lack of awareness and a lack of education. In spite of fact of having awareness raising campaign, still there is a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness for some societies regarding women's rights, because there is a common belief that if there is an empowerment for women, she will be rebellious and she will be rebel on her living, and she will be turned against the man. And this is a common belief that needs to be corrected. the economic empowerment of women is a way of expanding her options and actually giving more opportunities for the family. I wanted to mention that there are a number of programs that the Egyptian state is adopting to provide decent housing, affordable housing, in the youth housing, in actually easy loans for both genders. There is also support for SMEs, in addition to provision of necessary loans with easy and soft loans. Also, we have entrepreneurship, economic empowerment, as well as lending and saving programs under the economic empowerment of women. Through these programs and loans, she can improve her decent house, which would be a basic human right, that every human being should have a place to live in, so that he would take this place as a shelter. There are also some women who are prevented from going out from the cycle of violence. So she totally relies on her spouse in financial support. So it would become very difficult for her to get out of this circle. But we need to have a protective systems that support the woman and provide for her the protection that she needs, whether inside or outside the house. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Nesrin. I think it was very powerful, the points you made about change in social norms, legal provisions, as well as addressing impunity. Yeah. Thank you for your strong comments. We will continue with the other speakers of this panel. I will now address my next question to Ms. Helen King. She is the Economic Development and Partnerships Director at the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office since April 2023, and prior to this, she was the Deputy Director for Economic Cooperation. Thank you for joining us, Ms. King. You know, you're coming here from representing FCDO, and it would be useful, and I think for a lot of us to understand both the UK government priorities towards gender equity, but also as an international and bilateral organization, how can you enable and support countries to closer towards achieving the gender goals of the SDGs, as well as the Beijing Platform for Action? Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Honourable Minister, and to the panel speakers, and particularly the keynote speaker. Point about the involvement of men is incredibly important. The Minister made the same point. I noticed the gentleman has left, unfortunately, but hopefully he'll be back. So I think the sort of key role of government is ultimately to start with safety, to enable the access to services, access to opportunity, and then really to let women lead in that with that foundation. And I think the words and actions of both men and women matter, and elected representatives, in terms of setting out the importance of economic development and women's economic empowerment. So to say a bit about the UK government's work, we very much integrate women and girls and gender and inclusion into all of our economic development work and British investment partnerships work, which is focused on mobilising investment internationally and through the markets in developing countries to support inclusive economic growth. And women and girls are very much at the heart of that, and obviously the heart of the climate challenge as well. So 80% of our bilateral official development assistance has a focus on gender equality. And I want to know what the other 20% is and why it doesn't. But 80% at the least is focused on gender equality. The UK is also a founding member of the 2X Challenge criteria, which is the global standard for gender lens investing. And our development finance institution has a target of 25% of its investments meeting that criteria in terms of women's employment, women's empowerment, and women-led businesses. So we are putting targets in place to make sure that the results are happening on the ground. We're also obviously integrating gender work within our infrastructure and urban services work. As I mentioned, accessibility for women and girls, making sure that forms of infrastructure and forms of transport are safe for women and girls so that they can go to work and they can feel safe and prosper there. Through our climate finance funding, we also prioritise gender equality and social inclusion in the project preparation processes, where we are looking at the kind of investment opportunities and options for projects as we're developing them. And so I think it's really important to ensure that gender is put in place right at the beginning of a project preparation piece of work. So I'll just say one more thing, which is about ESG standards, which I think are also incredibly important and will increasingly be an important lever for making sure that gender is mainstreamed into everything that we're doing. And I think defining and sort of increasingly normalizing the use of the SDG standards and ESG standards will be fundamental to our success. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think 80% is good, the start. I think we should go to 100. But talking about women's employment, women-led businesses, you know, resources are very, very central, because you can talk, you can say we're going to do this, but when the rubber hits the road, it's not going to move unless money and resources are placed there. So I think that is something that as women, as citizens of our country, we need to demand from all our governments that it's not enough to make policies. In order to implement them, it's easy to make a great policy, but to implement it requires finances, requires the methodology to actually implement that. So I think FCDO has certainly, I think, given it priority. So thank you for your intervention. And our next speaker in this first panel is Dr. Inez Sanchez de Madariaga. She's a professor of urban planning at Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, and the UNESCO chair on gender. And she's also the chair of the advisory group on gender issues at UN Habitat. I've worked closely with Inez, and so welcome. Inez, I think it is really important at this point, really, if you could set the context. I mean, UN Habitat has also been doing a lot of very, I think, path-breaking work around gender. Even setting up the advisory group has been one of them. So if you could take us through some of the important steps that UN Habitat has taken towards gender equity and women's rights to the city. And as you pointed out to me just before, it's also a 30-year journey. So it actually coincides with the Beijing Platform for Action. So in a few minutes, can you please just share your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Kalpana, for this very very good timing for this question, because it's certainly 30 years since the work on gender in human settlements at UN Habitat started. It all started, and here I must say that it's so important to have history present, because as they said, the people who don't know the history are condemned to repeat it. So we have to have our history in our minds. It was 31 years ago, at the Beijing Platform for Action, when the women, the grassroots women, met in Uairu, near to Beijing. And they created, within the tent where they were settling outside of the city, they created the Uairu Commission for the first time. And this was the next year, in 1996. It was formalized by Secretary General of Habitat II, Walin Do, who founded and invited top-level women from across the UN system who were working on human settlements to join the Uairu Commission, so that the gender issues and the women's empowerment would have a space and a place for developing, for joining, for exchanging, and for advancing gender equality. So Habitat 2 included within its objectives the objective of gender equality and women's empowerment. So that was the beginning of it, 95, 96. And since then, the work has only increased and deepened and advanced very significantly. And this is what I'm going to very shortly summarize for you. So the next step, I would say, is during those early times, GLTN was created. Women were involved in its establishment, and it transformed what was initially something that only had an equality, a rights approach, into something that really addressed security of land tenure for women. Really important. Then the Safer Cities program was also established at the time within the City Urban program. Also with women, child care was provided in Habitat 2. And the Women's Caucus was for the first time created, and it has been a continuous feature of all World Urban Forums ever since. And this is a space for strategizing that regularly meets every day, every single day of the forums at 8 o'clock in the mornings. As another space for women within the World Urban Forums was created a bit later in 2010, and that's the Gender Now Women's Assembly, that was to be a space for women, for the partners, not an official gathering, but a space for the partners to discuss gender equality and women's empowerment. There was also, for a space of 10 years, a Women and Habitats office, and then, of course, the Millennium Development Goals, that is the predecessor of the Agenda 2030, had included two important objectives on gender, particularly promoting gender equality and empowerment of women, and something about maternity. If we go on in time, in the next few years, there were several gender resolutions, some of them very important ones, particularly the one of 2012 that created AGI, the Advisory Group on Gender Issues, as an independent expert advisory body to the Executive Director of UN Habitat, and of which I'm honored to be the third chair. The first was Aminata Traore from Mali, the second Ana Falou from Argentina, who is sitting here. And I must also name Jan Peterson, who was in Uairu and was one of the founders, and not the one in this room, as I understand, who was at the very early times in '95 in Beijing. Other important steps were in 2008, the first Gender Equality Action Plan. There have been two since that time, and another policy instrument, which is the gender policy, the policy and plan for gender equality, which has also been drafted twice. I would like to summarize that it was also very important what happened during Habitat 3. In Habitat 3, the women had a really important role. They were key actors among, I would say, among the whole partners and stakeholders that participated in Habitat 3. They were among the most successful and effective actors in this very important event. They played this great advisory role to the ED. The 10 policy papers were all engendered. Women and both grassroots and professionals participated throughout the whole process leading up to Habitat 3 and during Habitat 3 itself, and during the drafting of the new Urban Agenda Declaration, which, as you can see, has up to 34 paragraphs out of its 174, I think it has, that address women and gender issues. Really important achievement. Of course, there is also WOOC, where there are the standing committees on women and also on grassroots. And regarding the new urban agenda, I must also stress that the two quadrennial reports were the first and the second, in which I have participated personally in its drafting to make sure that that gender experiences were properly included. Many of them were included, and one of them from my country. And I have here the director of planning from the region of Extremadura, who was responsible for one of those experiences from Spain that we did when she was in a political position in that region. Land use legislation included gender throughout the planning system. That's no small achievement, I think. Thank you, Lala. So I think I'm finishing, and thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for, I think, giving us that history. And I think it's always nice to see how things move. And the ED informed us at the opening that more than 50% of the speakers at the panels are women. And I think we can see as we move across all the rooms that there is a very high representation of women. So, you just had to look. They were always there as speakers, and I think it's great. I am going to now do a quick second round, and the minister has said that he would like to respond to some of the issues that were brought up. So first I will give him the floor, and then the rest of the speakers.
Thank you. I would like to share with you some of my thoughts, not as a minister, but as an architect and as an urban planner. I think we as architects, and this is a urban forum, we as architects and urban planning need to design the environment, the physical environment in which women can flourish, women can play the role they deserve, the role they're entitled to. Traditionally, women in the past, played a role as maids. And that's not fair. And the spaces that we design as architects must have women in the center, because women are the keystone of society. The role of the women, I think it's a lot more noble than the role of men, being able to bear babies, and at the same time being able to be the CEO of an important business. Let me tell you something. In Ecuador right now, I would say more than half of the best architects are women. Many big companies have women as CEOs. In the past, women were relegated to a role of uneducated people that had nothing important to say. I think women have important things to share. I'm not talking as a minister. I do believe that the public space in the cities should be designed in such a way that women are not mistreated. We need to promote passive security. You don't always have a policeman at hand to help a woman. When you design cities in such a way that everything is able to be witnessed by the society, it is less probable that somebody tries to do something bad to a woman. The way we design public space in the long run is going to educate our people. First, by letting a criminal know that whatever they want to do is going to be done without proper punishment. But in the long way, it's all about culture and education. We need to learn, we men, we need to learn how to treat women with respect as equals. And the spaces that we design must be aligned with that idea. I think this is a must.
Thank you for speaking from your heart. We appreciate that. So I'm going to give each of the 4 panelists a chance to speak, but we're running short of time, as we always do in these events. So I'm going to ask you to limit your time to 2 minutes. So maybe we'll begin with you, Dr. Nasreen, and then Dr. Maimuna, and then Helen, and then Ines. So 2 minutes to give your sort of a comment, your final comment to this panel. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thanks a lot for this informative session. I believe it is very important to mention that in 2017 we have launched the National Women Empowerment Strategy that was launched in the Egyptian Women's Year, that has some pillars about economic empowerment, social empowerment, political empowerment, and protection. Within the framework of protection, there are a number of procedures that have been taken over the past 8 years. We have the secure or safe cities, the safe transportation, whether railways, and even allocating or dedicating places and wagons only for women. Luckily enough, the Prime Minister, who is an engineer in the first place, and there was actually a ceremony for the 50th anniversary of the graduation of the faculty, and we found that we had 3 prime ministers over the past 10 years that were graduates of the Faculty of Engineering, and they put into consideration all the necessary precautions for the adequate housing for women. And you've mentioned the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action of 1995 is an agenda for women's empowerment. It is a more inclusive political framework, and it is also a source for an inspiration for the development of programs that would lead to the prosperity of different countries based on gender equality as one of the SDGs. In addition, the state strategies like Sustainable Development Strategy, Egypt's Vision 2030, and the National Egyptian Women's Empowerment Strategy that was launched by the President of Egypt. As a matter of fact, the day before yesterday, there were a lot of discussions about women, and there was a very good exchange of ideas and expertise between different academics. They have resulted resulted in a number of recommendations that can lead to improving and advancing the status of women in sustainable cities. It has focused on decentralization and technology access to different women, in addition to the efficient use of these sources and the complete accessibility in rural areas and cities in order to become smart villages and cities, the thing that would lead to women's empowerment and eliminate violence against women, and so that we can have a prevention instead of addressing the problem. The recommendations has also focused the importance of having all the men included so that no one is left behind, including the elderly women. In addition, women have also to be involved in making adequate housing, taking into consideration all the conditions, and the housing should include different activities for a better quality of life. In addition, we have to put into consideration the unpaid care job as and finally, I would like to welcome you all here in your second country, Egypt, and looking forward to very fruitful sessions that and methodologies that can be adopted in Beijing Plus 30 and while getting ready for the year 2025. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your kind remarks.
Thank you so much. I echo the minister's. I'm an urban planner by profession. I can feel you, because I feel that is the city designed for women is also designed for all, including men, and city that is safe for women is also safe for all, including men. I think this is very important. And in Malaysia, we have had very fortunate for the peace and development that our region enjoy, owing to our neutral and non-aligned political approach. No matter what you do, if there is no continuous peace, there is no real development gain. Especially women is very much vulnerable to all this. So at the narrow wage, is women and girls is most vulnerable group in any city or community. So I've seen it in the first hand as my tenure as the Under Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Habitat. I think that's why I ensured that the gender dimension, our commitment to Beijing, is a cross-cutting in the UN Habitat Strategic Plan 2020 to 2025, because at that time we were asked to put in one box. I said gender is not in one box. Gender is a cross-cutting within all the strategies and the policies. So more importantly, it is to ensure that women issues are not marginalized and subsumed under the bigger and complex terminology of gender. Sometimes within gender is lost the word women. So to ensure women and girls at the table, at the center of a discussion, one requires a very strong partnership with the civil society group. In case of Malaysia, I would like to share with you multi-level cooperation. So many gains made by the early women's movement, solid built upon the women assuming prominent position like Deputy Prime Minister, woman, Cabinet Minister, Chief Judge, and now after 50 years, Mayor of our capital city is woman, because I'm the first mayor woman mayor in Kuala Lumpur. So, but the real gain must be met at the city level. So as a mayor of Kuala Lumpur, I hope, I'm just 2 months old as a mayor of Kuala Lumpur, I hope to mainstream gender and women's role, be embedding gender perspective in our urban planning, our plan-led development. We aim to shape Kuala Lumpur that is safer, more accessible and inclusive for all. And we envision Kuala Lumpur space, as what the ministers mentioned just now. We are initiating safer zone within the busy urban areas, increasing surveillance in high traffic areas and improving street lightings. And this seems like a small step, but to me, but collectively, we can contribute to creating a city where women feel comfortable, not scared in the crowd. Sometimes women also feel scared in the crowd. So I think this is one. Secondly, we must also elevate economic empowerment for women in the city that is a powerful and underutilized force in driving the sustainable growth by encouraging women-led business, particularly in emerging sectors like digital technology, green economy, and we should create avenues for more equitable participation. This is very important to collaborate together with local banks, business incubators, NGOs that will introduce programs and not only offer financial support, but also provide the training and mentorship that women need to succeed as entrepreneurs. So a city's economy is truly resilient when all members can participate and thrive. Thirdly, by fostering the gender-sensitive approach, climate resilience and disaster preparedness, I think is very, very essential. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by climate change impact, from flooding to health risks in urban areas. So we are integrating women leaders from vulnerable communities into our climate action task force and training them as community climate resilient champions. I think by equipping women in this role, we acknowledge their critical voices in building climate smart city. Last but not least, advancing women's role in our city is not just a box to tick. Sometimes I am already tick the gender box, that's it. It's not just a box to tick, it's a journey towards a more equitable and resilient urban growth. As a mayor, I am committed to championing this initiative and ensuring Kuala Lumpur continues to set an example as an inclusive and forward-looking city. And here, I invite all of you to come and visit Kuala Lumpur. Welcome to Kuala Lumpur. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor, the Minister, and Dr. Nesreen. Your words are music to our ears, all of it. Thank you. And I will now give the final 2 minutes, not more, to both Helen and Inez to just close this panel.
Thank you very much. And I've just got 3 points. So my first point is that everyone in this room has a role to play in fighting back against the rollback in women's rights globally, which is serious and organised, and I think both the voices of men and women matter in that push. Secondly, I really like the points around the design of cities and architecture, and the UK has expertise and a great comparative advantage in architecture and design. So there's an offer there from the UK, I think, in terms of what more we could do in terms of the design of cities and urban spaces. My final point, my main point really, which is that money makes the world go round. So the finance and the investment that will benefit women and enable women to be the drivers and leaders of economic growth, I think, is fundamental.
Are you making a question or not? You're not making a question? Oh, okay. 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 Well, Kalpana had written her question, which was about the mobility of. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the issue that we had discussed for this second intervention was about the mobility of care, which I really appreciate that Kalpana presented this as a question, of which I was talking recently in India, and because it's part of the work on care and planning that I have been developing for over 20 years now, and that I'm so happy that it's now triggered into policy making, and that it's being applied, that it's being used by so many academics around the world today, and it's being applied by so many cities and countries, particularly in Latin America. I developed this concept of the mobility of care in 2007, 2008, for the Spanish Ministry of Transportation. They asked me to analyze from a gender perspective the data on transport in Spain, and I found a number of biases, gender biases and omissions. And then I saw that many of the trips, that normal categorization of trips are defined as visiting, strolling, escorting, and so on, were really trips that people, mostly women, do for the care of others and for the reproduction of life and the upkeep of the home. So I suggested that we could create first a conceptual framework to understand what lies behind what care mobility, what care-related mobility can imply in different contexts, because it's not the same to speak about a first world country like Spain or speaking about an indigenous community during the pandemic in Bogota. So it's very highly contextual what care means and what care trips mean, but an umbrella category will allow to both quantify and make visible the trips and the mobility that people, in fact, women do on a daily basis for the upkeep of the home and the care of those who cannot move autonomously around the city. And so this concept has had a great success. It's been integrated into legislation in Mexico, and it has it's inspiring many academics and many policymakers around the world, and it allows to change the point of view. And then we developed a specific methodology to be able to measure it, because the common ways of collecting data do not allow to properly measure it. And we applied it in Madrid, and we really found that for the population between 30 and 45, the number of care trips are 29%, and employment trips are 33%, so it's only 4 points difference. And when you look at the sex disaggregation of this data, you see that the gender gap is enormous. Men do very few of those trips. Thank you.
Thank you, Inez, and I agree. I think the issue of care is now quite mainstream. So, and with that, I am going to end this first panel. Thank you all so much for your amazing interventions. I think it has really set the tone for the Roundtable, but also for the rest of WOOF, all the way to New York next year for the CSW. And so our next panel will continue this conversation. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to our first round of speakers, the Minister, Honorable Minister, Honorable Mayor, Dr. Nesreen, Helen King from FCDO, and Dr. Inez. But don't go. We have another round of 4 amazing speakers that we're going to continue this conversation. Will you stay or you have to leave? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for staying. Very nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. So as we continue the conversation, we have 4 speakers with us today, 4 more speakers. There is Ms. Kanta Singh, who is the Deputy Representative of UN Women in India. Welcome to you, Kanta. We have Reem El Sadi, who joined the European EBRD and is the Regional Manager for the SMEs Finance and Development Advisory Program in Egypt and the Levant, with a focus on women and youth. Our third speaker is Esther Muiru, who is a Gender Governance and Development expert, currently serving as the Global Advocacy Director for the Stand for Her Land campaign and a global initiative advancing women's land rights, hosted by Landesa. And last but certainly not least, we have Elizabeth Espinosa, is the daughter of Mindale Kichwa Otavalo parents. She holds a degree in accounting and auditing and currently works in the financial department of the Otavalango Living Museum in Ecuador. So we have 4 excellent speakers with us, and I'm going to begin. I'm going to ask Reem to share her thoughts from the perspective of a European bank. What are the key areas that you have supported towards women's equality and empowerment? And as Helen said, it's all about money. So how do we, fulfill our commitments to women's rights? Over to you.
Much. Okay, so basically, you said I work at the bank, and at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, inclusion with special focus on women and youth is part of our mandate. It's in the core of our agenda and the strategic capital. I mean, am I heard? Okay, can you hear me now? Oh, very good. So I was just saying that inclusion, gender and women, youth is part of our agenda and the mandate of the European Bank. I've been working in Egypt for the last 12 years, and in 2013 we established our first Women in Business program. Our focus is usually on SMEs, and the challenges I'm going to state very briefly now are related to the size of the business, but also they're more severe when it comes to the gender of the owner, whether she's a manager or she is the founder and owner. So basically all SMEs, all small-sized business, they suffer from limited access to finance. They suffer from limited access to information and know-how, from the fact that all rules and regulations, when they are applied, they don't take into consideration special circumstances of SMEs and of a women-owned business. The definition we use for women in business is very important because it is not only the ownership, but the management. Ownership does not always imply that the woman is a decision maker in her business. So empowerment comes from economic empowerment. When the women have their own financial independence, they can actually take better care of themselves and of their families. And all through the last 12 years, the business that we have supported, we usually have an evaluation 1 year after implementation of the advisory support. We see a lot of increase in turnover, men and women owning businesses, but we realize that other than the quantitative, the numbers and the ratios, when women actually are supported in a way that they think is relevant to their business, and when their business grow, we see a bigger impact on the living conditions of the family, on the psychological health of the woman, even on the working conditions in the business. Fresh paints, cleaner bathrooms. So women do invest in their communities when they have more money. What are the main challenges? Access to finance, access to loans is very difficult for women owning businesses. And what we try to do is to create special products for women. Products that don't depend on collaterals, fixed collaterals, because not all women have fixed collaterals that they can pledge. And also that does not see them as risk. So we need also some change in how bankers and risk committees view women-owned businesses. They're not risky. We at EBRD, we see them as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow and to have a bigger impact on the community and on the lives of children. So this is a nutshell, my 2 cents on women in business. They suffer double because of the size and because of the fact that the women, some laws help a lot in encouraging more women into the business and into the decision making. Like, for example, a few years ago, a law was issued obligating, 2 laws were issued that had a difference. The first one was banks must actually commit 25% of the portfolio for SMEs. And by enlarging the portfolio of SMEs, you automatically enlarge the portfolio of women. The other law was obligating companies to have 2 women on the board. So this actually had an impact. Although maybe women at the beginning were invited to join boards just to check the list, but with time, it showed that their participation, it's an opportunity that wasn't open for them. And with the participation of women, the performance of these businesses have actually improved, and this can be proved by numbers. So the way forward, we need more laws and regulations that empower the finances of women, how she can become a better entrepreneur. We need also to encourage banks to develop and design new innovative financial products that suit women, and we can start by actually listening to women. Why don't you go to a bank? Why were you rejected? So when we listen to them, we can design suitable financial products to empower them. I will stop, and I'm available to any questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, now it's working. Thank you. I think those are really very practical points. The issue of collateral, the issue that when women come as new borrowers, how do we create the enabling conditions? Because if we just keep it as business as usual, women will not this thing. So I appreciate your comments. I'm going to go next to Ms. Kanta Singh. UN Women is the body that has been the caretaker of the Beijing Platform for Action. And I think, what do you think we can expect in the Beijing Plus 30 negotiations next year? How can we ensure the importance of the local level? And how are we going to ensure funding? As everyone's been saying, that's where it all lies. So over to you, Kanta.
Now I can. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kanta Singh, and I work in the UN Women India office as deputy representative. I'm the last entrant in the panel, so please pardon me if I say something where I don't sound very prepared. But thank you, Kalpana, for inviting me. I think UN has always paid attention to gender equality, but the greater push came during Beijing conference, where not only UN but civil society organizations, women's rights activists, everybody lobbied the Secretary General to start a special entity for gender equality. And I think for that, I can safely say that we owe our existence to all of you. So thank you very much for your support. Secondly, I salute the resilience, the spirit, the strength of women across the globe. Despite, and in fact, there have been political upheavals, there have been wars, there have been very destructive forces working against gender equality in some cases, women have still stood their ground everywhere. I see it in CSW, I see it now preparing for Beijing Plus 30. I see them talking about not only about themselves, but also the general issues of humanity. They're saying war is not important, peace is. And I think women's voices need to be heard, but let me just go back to the question that was asked to me. And I will speak only from India perspective. The report, Kalpana, has been submitted by Government of India. There have been 3 priority issues that have been highlighted. One definitely is political representation of women. For those who don't know, women in India at grassroots level make a large force. About 1.4 million women are part of the local self-governance. That's about 60% of the total number of elected women representatives across the globe. So don't go by numbers. India is big in terms of numbers. However, the same is not or was not prioritized so far in terms of their representation in the state assemblies and in the parliament. But this year actually, Government of India has enacted an act to bring 33% reservation for women in the parliament and state assemblies. That means we'll have about 1/3 of our parliament and state assemblies as women, as and when the next step is taken, and which requires two essential things to be done. That will take time. So by 2029, we are hoping that act will be enacted. So that's one thing that government has prioritized. Second thing that Government of India has prioritized is safety of women. And that is very important because civil society organizations have really pursued the government and have lobbied with the government to prioritize safety. And third, that government has highlighted is the women's entrepreneurship, women's economic empowerment, and various things have been done for that, not only different schemes where the money could be in the hands of women, but also through public finance management, which India has taken a lead in terms of GRB, gender responsive budgeting. 6.8% of the national budget is devoted to women-related programs, which is 2% higher than last year. UN Women is fortunate to work closely with Government of India and support them in terms of GRB. So these are the three major highlights. What we expect and what we must expect from the government is first and last is accountability. And I think the governments in the region will have to face civil society organizations and will also have to probably commit more in terms of their work, their money, their also commitment, political will, everything. What we should expect from the discussions that are going to take place, at least in Bangkok, and regional discussions have started everywhere. We, as UN Women, started something called CSO committee, which is going to talk to women from across the country, and they are going to guide the discussions not only in India but also in the ministerial conference in Bangkok. I foresee, and I cannot guarantee that, but what I see is more investment, public and private, for gender equality. That is one thing, the key outcome is going to be that. Second is, across the globe, I think women are tired of being targeted in public, private, online spaces. And governments will have to do something about that, and I think we should expect that outcome from there. Third is more economic opportunities, jobs, decent jobs. There should be no pay gap. Also more money for entrepreneurship. My colleague here was talking about how money could be so how wealth transfer could happen not only through property but also collateral-free loans, also special schemes, also improving women's business, women in supply chains, number of things, a number of steps will have to be taken. Political representation is the next thing that is going to be asked whichever country doesn't have sufficient number of women. Also women in decision making is going to be asked for. And that is what I am hoping that more discussions will happen. But one of the key things, Kalpana, that I see now more frequently is the intersectional nature of women's work. Women are not just one type. There are different kinds of women, and every woman has a different need. So how do you factor in specific needs of specific categories of women? And I think that has been also demanded within India. So women with disabilities, young women, women from marginalized communities, women from minorities, women from remote areas, I think all those groups are going to be super active now in next couple of months, and they are going to representing their constituency not only in Bangkok and regional offices but also in headquarters. So I think we are hoping for better times. I'm always very positive because I work very closely with the government, and I see sometimes intent is not the problem. Sometimes the know-how of how to do it can be a problem. And I have seen my government has been very receptive in last 3 years. We started with G20, and I saw great momentum on women-led development. And now we have the right set of, temperament in the room, and as they say, where things are being pushed gently, but I think there is better willingness. And I'm hoping many more governments would like to commit more to women and would be more accountable. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Kanta is right. We actually asked her to join us yesterday on this panel because she decided to come at the last minute. But I think it was really important to have the perspective from UN Women and a very deep perspective from India because it is one of the big countries going forward. I also think it's very important that you brought up the point of the digital space. This is a new space that we're seeing a lot of the replication of the violence in the real world is being replicated online. And even the latest AI, ChatGPT, very recent research is showing that there is tremendous amount of bias in the machine, taking the algorithms there as well. So thank you so much for your, I think, optimism. I think we need all of us in civil society. Anna Falu is also here. She was part of UN Women UNIFEM. I think all of us for this thing. And I think it has been a long journey. And we do see UN Women as an agency, a UN agency that has supported women's organizations and grassroots groups. I am going to ask Elizabeth. I think we have now, and you talked about partnerships with civil society. So both Elizabeth and Esther are going to talk from the perspective of civil society partnerships and what we expect. So Elizabeth, you've been an activist for indigenous people rights in your country and everywhere. Can you share your journey and some of the highlights, and what do you want governments and international agencies to do to support this struggle for indigenous people's rights and indigenous women?
Hello. Oh, okay. Yo voy a dar mi participación en español.
Excuse me, I'm going to speak in Spanish. I would like it pleases me. I'm very honored to be here and to attend this session with you. My mom has always told me to express my needs, to express what I want to have, and being silent will not bring me my rights. My mom has always told me that we should have no boundaries for our dream. She has always been my role model, and I always liked her work so much. And her deep concern about her work and job. She always exerted a lot of effort to be able to go to her work and help us. I have always seen her very strong, going to work and then coming back, doing the household chores, doing her house job without complaining. She always had a great ability to strike this balance between her job and her home and her household chores. Always actually have my indigenous language and my culture, and I lost a lot of them due to the aggression and violence we were subjected to. This was what pushed my ancestors to stay away from the indigenous places. This actually hurt me so much. I always hoped to return back to my place and to imagine myself as an indigenous woman following the customs and tradition and speaking the indigenous language. I started my journey to get back this culture, customs and tradition and this language. And the most important step that I have taken is coming here, to come here and to speak out in front of all of you and to prove to you that we are not only taking care of our children and families, but we also work and we get a job and we express our needs. We always have a voice that expresses our needs and actually that reflects the so many tasks that we are doing, that we always do with in a balanced manner. Sometimes it's not easy because we get bullied so often, and actually there is a discrimination exercised against us. We experience a lot of things and we faced a lot of things which actually hurted me and caused me a lot of deep pain. I have always seen the suffering of lots of women. They suffered a lot due to these practices and this actually discriminatory acts, and in spite of all that, she managed to be a strong woman and to overcome all this.
Thank you so much. I think those were such powerful words, and sometimes when you think of the kind of violence we've committed as human beings on others, it's difficult to see this. I'm going to ask my friend Esther, who is a long-term grassroots leader, activist, a women's movement. She's worked in Africa, she's worked at the international level. Can you share some moments of impact and community-led actions, but also, as someone who's been, I think, participating since Beijing time, do you believe the Platform for Action has helped women's movements and grassroots organizations to advocate within the UN and with our governments?
Thank you, Kalpana. Thank you for everyone who stayed back to listen to us. It's not always easy when you have a long panel for people to wait, and we really appreciate your presence. Thank you very much. So as Kalpana says, I feel very delighted to have been asked to speak about Beijing Plus 30, because I was buried 25 years when I attended the 4th UN conference in Beijing, China. So when I meet in the corridors here, young people participating in these international conferences, I feel very pleased. And I do know that there is a lot of work and a lot of influence that young people can do. So, so what are some of the moments? So I've spent all my life working with grassroots women in every stage of my career. So I also count very privileged to do work that I care about and I love very much. When I came from Beijing, I was able to establish a grassroots women's organization called GROOT Kenya. It's a very large movement of grassroots organizations. Currently, I'm working with the Stand for Halal campaign, which is also a global initiative that is pushing for implementation of the very beautiful progressive laws, the very beautiful progressive policies, and the very well infested institutional frameworks we have in our countries that, if they were implemented, could secure women's land rights, and really pushing for their implementation. And because for us, particular people who come from rural areas, from communities that are living in poverty, is that land is our identity. It is our heritage. And once that is taken away from us, then we, and she just said, Elizabeth just said, then we are no longer the same people. Secondly, securing women's land rights, it's economic justice for women. When women do have land, then they are able to deal with the climate crisis. They are able to deal with the food security. They are able to develop their capacity to participate effectively in decision-making, in public agenda. So land for us is everything. And so what are some of the practical examples that I can share here that particular grassroots women have been able to do? In 2016, the Kenya government implemented what I would say the most progressive laws. And so they had to set up guidelines that would help institute or implement those laws. And one of the tool was to develop or to put in place local community land boards. And in the guideline, there was a clause that you could only be in the land board if you could show that you had secure land tenure in an area. So if you had a title, and we are talking about a country that less than 5% own land. And women in my country fought. They wrote memorandum of understanding to the Minister of Land, and that was deleted. And so we do have a lot of women in Kenya now sitting and making decisions on land. So that's very critical for us. The second thing where I have seen women in all the work that I have done in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, because the campaign is global, is the use of data by women. When women have been able to collect their own data, analyze the data, save the data or store the data in a way they can retrieve it themselves and use it to influence decisions. Very, very important. I've just participated in a process where UN Women has developed a tool on how to use, to make use of existing gender data and statistics. And we have been pushing for community, grassroots women-led data to be part of that. And I'm very excited because that tool has community-led data and examples of the data collected by women, held by women, that is about women, and it's going to be used. The other part I would want to talk, and because we are talking about urban cities and towns, is that when we are talking about safety in our, for our children, it is the women actually began to establish physical spaces for women and children to be able to operate to operate and make decisions. But one of the things that I was privileged to be part of in my country is women who are fighting against disinheritance of land among rural women and grassroots women in the communities. They build physical spaces. And these physical spaces ensured they could call the local authority to come to the community local spaces that were run and owned by the women for discussion. What did that mean? Is that women were no longer asked to go to the local authority to meet the local authority there to discuss about the important plans that the women wanted to have. But it's the local authorities that would come to the women's spaces, and the women would chair the meetings. And it makes a lot of power for grassroots women, women living in the slums, women living in the rural areas, to actually be the one chairing meetings where other people are working on. But do we think that the Beijing Platform for Action has been useful? Definitely yes. She just talked about the role that women did to participate in establishing the UN Women. I was part of the GEAR campaign through the Huairu Commission, and literally it is the organized groups of women in the world that they set the UN Women. It is not the UN system that established the UN Women. It is the civil society organization because of organizing. But I would also say there are a lot of emerging women's organizations since Beijing that have been able to build a solid movement of global women's organizations, governments, making solidarity, and this has culminated to the Generation Equality Forum. Without the women's organization, definitely we wouldn't be there. But I would say also we do have some challenges because all is not glossy. I must say one of the biggest challenges we have is that the development world and most governments think that it is free work to organize. It is not easy. And we need to invest in and put resources for women to organize, to secure land, to secure houses, to participate in the planning. This is very, very important. The second thing we do have, like I said, too many good policies. We need to stop using all the resources we have to putting new policies, but invest on implementing what we have, because the gap is huge. But also, of course, we have lots of lack of cohesion on policies, on programs, and for gender equality and sustainable development, we need to have cohesive way of planning, cohesive way of implementing our policies and designing our policies. But the voice, the agency of women that are living the problems we are living today must be at the center and at the front of making decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that really strong, I think, words that said that, you know, the kind of the synergy between civil society, women's movements, grassroots movements, and the UN Women and UN Habitat as well. I think, as Ines talked about, the different ways that gender has become mainstreamed in the work that we do. I'm told that the ED will be joining us in the next 10 minutes to share her words as well. So, but we have a few minutes till then. I'm going to ask each of you, I'm going to give you another 1.5 minutes. And then if we have time, we will open it up for a few people to give their comments as well. First, you, Reen.
You want me to comment, or is there a question? No, I can comment. Okay. So again, let's go back to the fact that I'm speaking from my position as a banker, whom I'm not be the gender expert, but however, we do work on gender inclusion, and it's very important, as I said, and the main challenges that faces women are her capacity to penetrate the business community, to become a strong owner or CEO of a company that a bank would actually welcome her and give her the loans she needs. As was mentioned also before, access to collaterals is an issue. Access to literacy, financial literacy is very important. A lot of women don't know how to calculate an interest rate, let alone other financial ratios that are crucial for the business. Access to information in general, because not all women are very mobile. She needs to have information available at a click of a button. I think also what's important is the social obligations that women have, especially in our region. So you will find that at all standards, women are very encouraged to work. Actually, her husband would cheat for her as long as she does not, she balances her life, as long as the kids are well taken care of. So at any point when there's a problem, she will be blamed. So nobody will take this role from her, but again, she's considered that she has to succeed. So these are the main challenges that we hear day in, day out. The lack of financial products that are designed to address the needs of women, the limited insurance options also. So I guess that kind of summarizes everything, and over to the rest of the panel.
I think we are at a very difficult stage. When you start counting the progress that has been made in last 30 years, there is a lot to celebrate. But also when we start looking at the challenges and persisting challenges, there's a lot that we need to do. There's a lot that governments need to do, and civil society organizations will have to continue working closely with the governments to make things happen. What I would like to talk about is, and that bothers me all the time, is the violence against women, and I don't want to stop talking about it till something is done in a concrete manner. But I think all of us are aware about the consequences of violence, the impact of violence on women's economic lives, which we are trying to solve in an isolated manner. But till the time women are safe, women are free from violence, women are in a peaceful environment, they will not be able to realize their full potential in terms of economic participation. I think Beijing Plus 30 would be a good time to reimagine, reassess, and also reprioritize some of the things that women need in this world. And to me, most important after being safe is also leadership. And we all need to start being where money is being discussed. We all need to be where decisions are made. We don't have to have side events, we have to win the main events. And that has been a pain, at least personally. I always feel, whether it is COP, whether it is any big event, women are in side events. Because it requires for us to have money. And we should not be shy of talking about money and asking for money and fighting for money for ourselves, without which we will again be in corners of the discussions. And the last thing would be that if we all come together, if we all talk in the same language, if we reprioritize and talk to the duty bearers as well as governments, I think it will not be very difficult for us to convince them, because at least from our experience, I can say that political leaders do look at women as a political constituency. And if they look at us as political constituency, it's very much our right to also ask for what we deserve, what we need to have, and what we need to achieve to be in a space where we can realize our full potential. So time is now. Let's act now. And I always stop by saying that this sanctuary belongs to women. We should not be shy of asking for a space in the sky and on the earth. Thank you. Land belongs to us also, as you said. Thank you.
The ED has kindly said she will listen to the last two comments as well. So Elizabeth, our indigenous activist, and then Esther, just 1.5 minutes, and then she will deliver her remarks.
En Latinoamérica tenemos como país de Ecuador, somos
We are now currently we can currently say that 100% of what is taking place already is being done by women. But actually what the world can see is not enough. Many women cannot access what they want. Like 8 of each 9 women cannot access what they want. There are other points also concerning the financing, the state laws, and the ladies working in these areas. The governments have a very important role to play, including, for example, developing laws in Ecuador, because we do not have one for financing, and we do not have any aids provided to women. So decisions should be made about developing these laws. In addition, education is of utmost importance. We do not have enough education. So I believe that there is no progress made in this regard. Thank you.
The Beijing Platform for Action had over 30 references on women and land rights. Over 30 references. The SDG has over 169 references on women and land as critical, with very clear, I think 1.4, 1.1.4, and 5.8.2. I don't remember them offhand. Very clear indicators. We have statistics that show that less than 15% of women in the whole world own land. And the statistics are out there. In many countries, unless you count the jointly owned land, a lot of our countries, in fact, Kenya, my country, we always used to say less than 10%. Recently, the Kenya demographic survey showed that for women owning their land, it is less than 5% when they own their land, because we don't have the data on land. But it is very heartening to see that many years later, a resource like land is not what women are using. And we cannot close the gender inequality gap. We cannot achieve sustainable development unless there is gender equality in control and ownership of land. Very important. For human settlement, in 1997, during the second International Forum on Urban Poverty, before they even became World Urban Forum, the Secretary General, the UN head of UN, committed that over 30% of representatives for International Forum on Urban Poverty then will be grassroots women and women living in poverty. We see this decline if you ask how many women are living in poverty from the slums, even with the rural-urban linkages, we still are losing these women into the participation. So we need to put more resources in making sure that women are not the a team will be talking about, that they will be critical participants and genuine partners to the work that we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. They are very strong words. So I do not need to introduce our wonderful ED, Ana Claudia Rosso, with the Executive Director and an economist with over 20 years of experience in housing and informal settlement. I'm going to ask her to share a few thoughts about this whole issue and give us her perspective to the Women's Roundtable. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. First of all, apologies, I couldn't stay all the time with you, but I wanted to make sure that I at least am with you for a couple of minutes, and I listen a little bit, and then make sure that I work then after with our staff to see how we can move on with this agenda after the World Urban Forum. But as I appreciate the last speaker that just mentioned the origins of the World Urban Forum, and that's why I also made sure at the beginning of the forum to remind us that the genesis of the World Urban Forum, why it was born, and to go back to that as a collective. I don't need to say that I believe what I believe, that I really believe the transformation, for the transformation that we need to take place in the world, gender balance is the minimum, and empowerment of women. So I really believe in everything we are talking here today. But Angela was sharing with me 4 points of the discussion. And I'm thinking how we can embed that into our actions and our strategic thinking, and also the role of the World Urban Forum for the future. How we can strengthen, right, this space with you during the forums, but also between the forum. So she mentioned 4 points: empowerment and inclusion, more women in leadership position. Also the aspects of protection, of care and protection, safety, the role of men, and then finance. And I believe that all these 4 aspects are related to the core aspects of the mandate of UN Habitat, and what we have been discussing and developing for our next strategic planning cycle that goes from 26 to 29. Of course, the importance of local is clear. We have this whole World Urban Forum about local. Local is where innovations take place, where creativity happens, where people gather together. That's why innovation takes place at the local sphere, because this is where we meet, where we gather, where we exchange ideas, where we build something together. So the local is critical, but we need to have more women in the local leadership right now. So how can we accelerate and localize the SDGs, the 2030 agenda, without having gender balance in the decision-making process, in governments, but also outside governments, the academia, the civil society, the movements, the private sector. We also have social movements that are dominated by men and don't recognize the importance of gender balance. So this is an important aspect that we can work with you from UN Habitat. Especially working with our mayors, with our local government leaders, and with the grassroots leaders, with the civil society leaders, to get together and to think how we can also offer cross support to engage more women leaderships and help them to open up space for women in leadership positions. The second aspect, society protection. The safety, of course, there are major issues that are outside our scope of work. But if I think, for example, you just mentioned informal settlements, these are areas where women are at the most vulnerable space. These are areas where safety is a big issue. So addressing informal settlements with the urgency that it requires and at scale is a fundamental aspect. So I believe if we address, enhance our work addressing this challenge and working with cities, with national government, with international financial institutions to see what are the bottlenecks, how we can unlock land, how we can provide proper infrastructure in formal settlements, considering that in most of the case we don't have clarity about land, and this is a big bottleneck. But we can also work with women and empower them in this process to have more information about these areas, and you are doing that already, right? All we have to do is to strengthen the work that you are already doing. The role of men is critical. So yeah, using all the spaces that we have here vis-a-vis urban development, vis-a-vis challenges of housing and leadership in cities, but also starting with the spaces that we have, right? The spaces that we can manage, like today, for example, the World Urban Forum. And use these spaces to engage the men in these discussions as well. On finance and wealth, I believe then there you tackled that very well. Land and housing, it's a combination. It's a strong combination. We all know that women, when we need safe, solid ground to thrive as humans, but especially women, heads of household, having a house is critical for everything. First of all, they are able to open a tap and have water. That's basic. They don't have to carry water, starting from that point. And then secondly, a place where they can raise their children. I have children. I cannot imagine raising my children without a safe home. And this is the minimum. How can we achieve the SDGs if children don't have access, a safe home where they can come back and do their homework and stay at school and stay safe and stay healthy? And it's also an economic asset. It's an important economic asset for women, especially for women. And of course, address enables everything, enables business, enables finding a job. So the entry point, access to land, access to basic services, and access to housing is an entry point to access wealth and to access financial opportunities and economic opportunities for women. Just rough ideas, rough reflections in the panel today. Of course, there's much more than that. But I just wanted to come here and be with you and open this door of conversation. I see many heads nodding. I'm very tired. It's the end of the day. But I hope to then listen to your feedback and find the right spaces where we can work together and keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edie. I know it's a long, you still have 2 more days, but it's
more things today.
More things today, but you know, the World Urban Forum is really a space that has been created for all of us, and we truly appreciate it. So thank you for giving us time. I will hand over to Dr. Nasreen to give the final closing remarks for the day.
الحقيقة شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you so much. For Excellency, the chairman of the session, thank you so much for the excellent moderation of the session. There was a great momentum in actually presenting different ideas that have lots of things in common. I do confirm on a number of messages. First of all, the house is the actually safe home is the starting point of investing in humans, and we will not be able to raise generations without a home, or else they will be time bombs in the society. The other issue, we need to have a continuous monitoring for the policies that are developed on the ground and to determine the current development and having KPIs to measure this progress. The other issue I share with everyone in the importance of correcting the wrong concepts and about the status of women in the society and actually determining her societal roles. This is a very critical issue because we nearly actually share these ideas. Maybe some religious beliefs, wrong religious beliefs, intersect in determining the role of the woman. So we need to change the concepts and the culture of the society, which is a very vital issue. I had an experience when there was a need, very important need, when there was a big rock that was going to fall in El Duea area, and there was a study about the dwellers of such area and the women there, and when the state provided for them houses to move to another area, they refused to leave the slums because their lives is linked to this place. So when we think of finding spaces, finding lands, finding houses, it should fulfill the needs of the dwellers of such areas. And the Egyptian state recently has done a unique experience in overcoming the slums and to move the dwellers of those slum areas to other areas, at the same time to provide for them the qualifying programs so that they don't take the culture of the slums to the new areas. We all know that there are certain behaviors that might be spread in the slum area, so we needed to have programs to actually rehabilitate the dwellers of the slum area to be able to live in the new areas in a better way. The other issue, there is another Egyptian experience pertaining to developing the Egyptian rural areas and improve the infrastructure there. Let's agree that the deterioration of services in the infrastructure is a very strong motive for practicing violence against women, because she is the one who shoulder the responsibility of improving the living conditions. I have 2 points. First of all, we need to have budget responsive to the woman, changing the policies to practical activities, the social participation and the decentralization in planning. Thank you so much.
Thank you all of you for being here. I'm really sorry we didn't have time for conversation. Thank you. And we have to leave this room, it seems, so. Thank you to all the speakers, Kanta and Esther and Elizabeth and Reem. So thank you all of you for staying and listening. You can catch the speakers outside. We can continue this conversation. It's never enough time to talk about women's rights. Have a good day.